We can't have an Orktober without talking about the greatest orc that has ever lived, Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka, the Prophet of the Waaagh. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome. I am your host Gersh1. We create 40k lore videos every single day. For the entire month of October, we're creating greenskin specific lore videos, so if you guys have any suggestions, please tell me what they are in the comment section below. And if you guys enjoy our content, declare a Waaagh on the like button, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. But with all that said, let's get into 40 facts on the brief history of Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka. Ghazghkull started his career as a common Goth warrior on the backwatered planet of Urk. There was really nothing special about this orc. That was until a raid upon a Space Marine command sanctum, where Ghazghkull caught a bolter shell to the face that pummeled a large area of his cranium and caused extensive brain damage. Luckily, the Death Skull pain boy known as Mad Doc Grosnick was close at hand, and he replaced part of Ghazghkull's cerebrum with bionics made from adamantine. This experimental augmentation had two distinct side effects besides preventing his death. Firstly, it afforded even greater protection to what was left of his brain, and secondly, and probably most crucial for the wider galaxy, Grosnick's surgery also triggered something deep within Ghazghkull's mind, a mantic new glint that entered his blood-red eyes. Fresh drive and ambition invigorated his formerly unremarkable existence. Ghazghkull claimed to be receiving visions sent by Gork and Mork themselves, visions that urged him on to power and conquest. From that day forward, Ghazghkull's rise to power was meteoric. Those orcs of Urk who didn't fall in line were rapidly bludgeoned into submission. Ghazghkull had brawn and belligerence enough to establish his dominance over the entire world. Few of his subjects gave much thought to whether or not the new warlord was really talking to the gods or was simply a delusional megalomaniac. And when the planet's star began to flicker and perish, Ghazghkull hailed this as a sign from Gork and Mork that it was time for the Waaagh to depart the world and stomp the galaxy flat. Now, by some dark quirk of fortune, Ghazghkull and his horde were able to capture and board the Space Hulk World Killer in this moment of great need. The mech boys quickly got to work, and they set off across the stars. Bursting into real space after a long span of time spent in the warp, Waaagh Ghazghkull emerged into the rich and prosperous Imperial system. They wasted no time in falling upon its capital world of Armageddon, a world that would make Ghazghkull's name. The fortress world of Armageddon was a rich hub of commerce, military industry, and transportation that lay upon a key warp route towards the Segmentum Solar. It was well-resourced and heavily defended by naval assets, regiment upon regiment of Astra Militarum, and a mighty complement of the Iron Skull Titan Legion. And for all of this, Armageddon wasn't ready for Ghazghkull. Not only did the visionary warlord have immense numbers and overwhelming momentum on his side, but Armageddon's planetary governor, Hervin von Strab, was also a disastrously incompetent egomaniac. Strab's piecemeal attempt to deal with what he sneerily viewed as the orc irritant, while keeping up appearances with the wider Imperium, played right into Ghazghkull's jagged claws. Waaagh Ghazghkull rampaged across the continent of Armageddon Prime, crushing each regiment of planetary defenders and cannibalizing their wrecked tanks. As one bastion after another fell, still Strab did nothing. Instead, his duty was taken up by the Imperial Commissar Yarrick, this act of disobedience for which he was exiled to the remote Hive Hades. Meanwhile, Ghazghkull's hordes crossed the green hell of Armageddon's equatorial jungles, where Strab had claimed that they would not tread. Having reached the continent of Armageddon Secundus, they crushed the Iron Skull Titans and left their graffiti-scrawled wreckages to burn. The warlord himself led the storming of Hive Infernus just as the season of storms descended. He even let loose wild warbands of speed freaks into the ash wastes to run down refugees and retreating Imperial military assets as they tried to reach the safety of Hive cities further south. In desperation, Strab unleashed his ancient stockpile of virus bombs, but amidst the tightly packed battlefields of Armageddon Secundus, human casualties from these indiscriminate weapons were as severe as those suffered by the orcs. All the while, Ghazghkull drove his Waaagh onward with unbreakable determination, eventually crushing Hive Hell's Reach despite the suicidal courage of the city's defenders. Then came the siege of Hive Hades, and with it, a sudden change in the fortunes of war. Under the leadership of the exiled Commissar Yarrick, Hive Hades' defenders fought as if possessed. So spectacular was the battle, so slow the orc advance, that Ghazghkull came to lead the siege in person. Showing cunning far in excess of an average Goth warlord, Ghazghkull employed all his tactics and stratagems he could dream of, but Yarrick countered each one. Orcs fought volunteer defense militia along every processional, every barricade, and even through the Hive City's many ducts and crawlways. In Uruk, Ghazghkull had met an enemy worth the fight. The Grand Warlord swiftly became obsessed with defeating this tenacious and respected foe. However, this obsession is both the strength and weakness of most orcs. The same tendencies that make them relentless foes, reckless pilots, and prolific inventors also leads them to ruin, which is what happened to Ghazghkull at Hive Hades. The meat grinder around the besieged Hive sucked in ever more orc material and warriors, leaving those warbands assailing Hive Tartarus and Hive Acheron ill-determined and short of reinforcement. And when Imperial support finally showed up in the form of the Ultramarine Salamanders and the Blood Angel Space Marines, the secondary orc hordes could not hold. But even as beset as the Greenskins were by the freshly arrived Adeptus Astartes, Ghazghkull didn't give up. He again proved his superiority to most Greenskins by recognizing the damage that his obsession was causing and setting a plan in motion to readdress the balance. Sadly, he faced the unified strategic brilliance of the Blood Angels commander Dante and his allied Space Marine commanders, coupled with Uruk's hideously costly defenses of the ruined Hive Hades, and Ghazghkull's Waaagh was at last broken. Nearly every orc warlord in history has gone down fighting alongside their warband. Not Ghazghkull. He fled Armageddon, leaving the world infested with scattered greenskins and vowing to one day return. After all, Armageddon had put up the best fight Ghazghkull had ever experienced. He wasn't about to pass up a chance to enjoy it all over again. 57 years to the day after his defeat on Armageddon, Ghazghkull returned at the head of a still more enormous Waaagh. The planet's defenders had spent decades rebuilding and fortifying against the coming of the Grand Warlord. They now named him the Beast of Armageddon. Yet Ghazghkull had also not been idle. He had spent years fighting one brutal conflict after another, both to subjugate rival warbands and also to test and perfect strange new weapon technologies against which his enemies could not hope to be prepared for. Many and exhaustive are the accounts of the conflicts that followed. Ghazghkull brought a war that his enemies and even a number of his own underlings were utterly wrong-footed by. The Grand Warlord had mercenary freebooter strike at agri-worlds and shipping around Armageddon, both to choke off supply routes and to spread terror as he approached. He hit the system with multiple roughly coordinated orc fleets to better encircle and destroy Imperial naval defenses. Rather than get drawn into another fight for Hive Hades, Ghazghkull had his Space Hulk deploy tractor beams, using them to ensnare asteroids before releasing them onto the Hive from low orbit. He unleashed drop fortresses known as rocks, built scrap iron submersibles to cross the planet's storm-lashed oceans, and directed super teleporters to beam towering war effigies directly into battle. And for all of this, the Imperium hurled tides of reinforcements. The battle for Armageddon became an endless grinding war of attrition despite all of Ghazghkull's best efforts. As the conflict ground ever on, so did the Grand Warlord suffer increasingly painful and garish visions sent by Gork and Mork. And then, with no warning at all, Ghazghkull was simply gone. Some say that the Grand Warlord experienced an almighty megavision in which Gork and Mork charged him with a new task. Others say that the Great Green God plucked Ghazghkull up and cast him across the stars as a spurred action. Others still claim he was simply struck by inspiration and ambition, or according to official yet absurdly unlikely Imperial propaganda, that he simply turned tail and fled. Whatever the case, Ghazghkull's departure from Armageddon appeared to have come just before Gork's grin split the galaxy, the Cicatrice Maledictum. After it did, strange reports started to reach Imperial sources of the Beast of Armageddon leading planetary invasions in sectors many light years apart. Surely, said those few observers with the ability to piece the reports together, that some accounts had to be mistaken. There was no way that Ghazghkull could be in so many places all at once. In defiance of all logic, however, the attacks continued. What no one yet realized was that Ghazghkull had embarked upon his grandest plan to date. He no longer led a Waaagh, but rather the Great Waaagh. He had set himself not against a single world, nor even a system or a species, but the entire galaxy. And in order to fight and beat every last sentient being that could ever be found amongst the stars, he planned to gather the totality of the orc species to his boss pole or die trying. Since Ghazghkull began the seemingly impossible endeavor, strange things have been occurring. More orc Waaghs than ever before are springing up, with a disproportionate number traveling towards wherever Ghazghkull is at that current moment. Of course, with the Grand Warlord plunging in and out of Gork's grin like a lunatic, this has still seen many orc tribes rampaging back and forth across the stars in a seemingly random and chaotic fashion. And yet gradually more and more orcs have been rallying to Ghazghkull's side. With each fresh influx, he clobbers whatever big brute warlord seeks to challenge him and folds his followers into his own teeming ranks. Even those who seek to stop his rampage only lend him more power. Every rival he beats down increases his notoriety. When worlds such as Karaheim and Abstensius put up resolute defense against the invading hordes, Ghazghkull only won greater renown when he finally crushed them. Rumor has it that the Eldari of Craftworld Alatok and the savage warriors of the Space Wolves have even taken their turn in striking at the Grand Warlord in the hopes of slaying him and thus breaking his Great Waaagh. The latter coming closest to achieving this aim. The mighty Wolf Lord Ragnar Blackmane met Ghazghkull in battle upon the Hive world of Krongar, almost leading both combatants' mutual destruction. Yet even as the broken Blackmane was being borne across the Rubicon Primaris following his crippling injuries after the battle, so was Mad Dog Grotsnick recapitating his beloved warlord onto a mighty new super-orc body that he had spent many decades perfecting. So it is that Uruk Thraka is now bigger and more terrifying than ever before, boasting an armored bulk more akin to a Gorkanaut than a warboss. Ghazghkull also wields weaponry to match. Gork's claw is so vast that its blades can enfold a fully armored Primaris Space Marine and slice them neatly into steaming chunks. Mork's roar, his custom shooter, generates so much Daka that his victims don't so much die as simply evaporate into a red haze. Ghazghkull is truly a living war engine, a walking embodiment of Gork and Mork and the greatest prophet of the Waaagh. He is coming for the entire galaxy, and some are beginning to fear that this is a fight he's going to win. And that's the lore to Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now, there is a longer video. It's like an hour-long video that explains in detail the history of the Beast of Armageddon. It goes all the way up until, I think, after Armageddon, or the third war for Armageddon. But that video's old, and it's not that great. I'm working on a longer video that not only includes all of Armageddon, but also like the latest stuff with the Space Wolves, and also what's going on, or what did happen with the Octarius sector, because that's something that kind of was left out. I don't know if GW is just going to change that, but in the old lore, Ghazghkull actually landed on Octarius, or the Octarius sector, where the Tyranids were basically consuming the orcs, and they had gotten them to like the last line of defense, and then all of a sudden the prophet comes and he saves the orcs, and they continue the fight and stuff like that. I don't know what happened. I don't know if GW is going to continue that story. We do have the Octarius sector stuff coming out for Kill Team, so I'm going to read up on that lore to see what's going on, but expect that video later in the future. I wanted to give you guys this brief explanation because it's Orktober, so I wanted to throw in the greatest orc that ever lived during this month, so you guys just get that quick little brief explanation. Now, I did want to answer some of the questions that you guys left off in the last 40 facts video. This is a 40 facts and lore on the Ork Boy. So let's get to it. If you guys have more questions for me, please just comment down below, or anything that you guys would like me to react to. So if there's something going on within the Warhammer community, just ask down in the comment section below, and we'll talk about it in the next episode. So let's get to it. This first question comes from Siobhan Tubbins. More daily life, please. Like a daily life of orc variants that would make my Orktober. Yeah, I can do that. Orktober's about to end. There's one more week, and I think next week, the Sound Alchemist has prepared an entire spooky 40K video, release thing for the entire week, so it's going to be kind of cool. But on top of that, yeah, I'll try to create a script for you as far as like the daily life of some type of orcoid. But yeah. Next question comes from Michael Starr. Orcs are neither male nor female. Like mushrooms, they have thousands of genders that help propagate the species, as well as holding the genetic coding for all of the various forms of orcoid creatures. Yes, thank you. It was very hard to explain what I meant, I guess, when you get put into the box of is an orc a female or male? There's something completely different. They're not even like animals. They're more akin to lichen, so not even plants or fungus. Or is a fungus a lichen? I don't think they are, but I remember reading somewhere that they are very similar to lichen in that a lichen has lived forever. It's the same creature, but in different spots. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, thank you for explaining that a little bit better. Next question comes from Gilded Bear. Oh, October? Orcs get their own month? When do Ultramarines get their own month? Ultramarines always get their month because it's Ultramarines, you know? They all fanboys, or all Space Marine fanboys start out with Ultramarines, it seems like. And then you branch off from there and become a real wargamer when you actually start playing a Xenos race on the tabletop, I feel. So yeah, Orktober will forever be a solid thing of this channel just because it's amazing and I'm an Ork player. I've always been an Ork player, so that's going to stick around. But those were the questions for today. If you guys have more questions for me or comments, please comment down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.